Welcome to the Bad Boss Podcast with Ken Williams. Do you wish it was possible to survive the boss from hell without quitting your job or selling your soul? If you are struggling to find the job you love when you work with people you never wanted to be friends with, or you hate the job you used to love, we will help you own your career and love your work again. And welcome back to the Bad Boss Podcast. And as you can see, I have a friend with me. Welcome, Cassandra. I'm just checking all my stuff to make sure that everything's recording the way that it should be. Welcome, Cassandra.
Hey, Ken, that's perfectly all right. I completely understand. It's always a great thing to test that equipment to make certain we can be seen and we can be heard, right?
Yes, that's right. I thought I had it all going, and then I thought, oh, I better make sure. So we should be good. We should be good.
Yeah.
And Cassandra and I met a few weeks ago um, because I work with people who have bad bosses, and Cassandra works with people who have a need to get into a new job.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what you do, who you help, and then we're going to get into your rhinestone method, which I thought was really interesting when we were chatting a few weeks ago.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to have this connection with you. You're absolutely right. When we first met, we discovered that there was synergy in what we did. We both are in the career space.
Hmm.
We're both in the professional development space.
Right.
You were focusing in on the bad boss. And I know when I heard the title of what you were doing, I was thinking, oh, I've had a few of those myself.
We all have.
Yes. And where I focus in the professional development space on helping busy professionals to ditch the anxiety that they may be experiencing and help them to replace it with excitement for their career all over again. As we know, sometimes you get stuck, you feel stagnant, you don't have that momentum and or
Mhm.
the advancement that you seek. And I work with busy professionals who are in that space that are ready for more momentum,
Uh-huh.
ready to have more advancement, and I'm able to assist them with excelling not only professionally, yet personally as well.
Right. And the thing that I've been seeing more and more as I have gone through some of this type of transition myself, but also as I've been working with people, is the personal development and the career development really go hand in hand.
They do. I learned that early on in my career. I discovered that although you may go to a professional development training because your job sent you or because you wanted to learn to develop a skill for the sake of your job or your career, that usually you walk away with the secret nuggets that are helping you for your personal life as well. And
Right.
as I transitioned into first doing training and speaking, and then eventually coaching, what I discovered is you can't separate the two. The two
No.
are always connected.
It because it's still you.
It's still absolutely, it is still you. That is so true. It is still you.
So I tell people that, yeah, I'm going to help you figure out how to deal with a bad boss, but that's also going to help you deal with your kids or your coworkers or your spouse or your partner or any other relationship. All relationships are relationships. It's all the same.
Very true, very true. And you sound like me. A lot of times when I'm teaching the professional development training courses, sometimes I'll teach a communication segment that I call scripting, how to phrase out exactly what you need to say in a tough conversation.
Right.
And I love it around the holiday season because I'll say, okay, my challenge to you is to take what I've been teaching you and put it into practice in the real world. And with the holidays coming up, you get the chance to practice on your family.
Right. And what better place to practice because these are people that know and love you already.
Absolutely.
And so you can see how it works. And then because it is you, you take yourself, your brain into every
Yeah.
situation you're in.
Everywhere you go, there you are. So
So
true.
I was really interested in when you told me about your rhinestone method, I was really interested in number one, how did you come up with that? And then walk us through the method.
Yeah, it is such a quirky and creative framework and philosophy that sometimes people do a double take and go, "What? What did you just say?" And it's put on your rhinestone combat boots. That was the initial phrase that was created over 15, 16 years ago. And
Okay.
I'll tell you, Ken, I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine, and they were in the space of dealing with a bad boss and dealing with a un I want to call it a stressful, let's call it a stressful environment.
Okay.
A bad boss and a stressful work environment, and they were feeling unfulfilled. They were feeling stuck. They were feeling frustrated. And truth be told, they were in that space where they were so full of self doubt that they didn't know exactly what to do and in what direction to go.
Mm,
And actually, no, let me say it this way. They knew what to do, and they knew that a
okay.
change was needed.
Right.
They were afraid to do it.
Yes.
They weren't ready yet to do it. And in the conversation, as it was I say it was a friend girl huddle. So we were together having this conversation, and the two of us, meaning the other friend and myself, as we're listening to our good friend tell us yet again about the work situation that she was in,
Hmm.
we recognize it's time to do something. It's
Right.
time to make a move. And before I realized it, I blurted out, "Girl, you had better put on your rhinestone combat boots."
I love it.
And both of them looked at me and they were like, "What?" And she said, "What type of foolishness is that?" And it made me laugh. And I thought, you know what, Lord? That is some foolishness. So, what are you telling me about this phrase? And I'm asking the question, what are you telling me about this phrase, as the two of them are laughing and inquiring of it from me. And in that moment, I'm really thinking, I don't know
Right.
exactly what I meant by it, other than I know it's a representation of some form of movement. And as they kept asking questions, and as I say, the Holy Spirit started downloading into me, what I recognized was that spiritually, I knew it was time to make a change.
Right.
Spiritually, I recognized it was time for her to use every ounce of her talent, her experiences, her abilities, the things that made her look good, that did well, everything that she had that was the package of who she was as a professional,
Uh-huh.
embody it,
Right.
embrace it, and go out there and start making some moves.
I
And then
love
it also helped that she's wearing a rhinestone bracelet, had on rhinestone earrings, a rhinestone necklace, and her bling. Every time she moved or turned her head, the bing,
it. Hmm.
the pop, the visual of her looking good, which should represent that she feels good too.
Right.
But in that moment, it wasn't representing that. And the rhinestone for me was, hey, you can get out there and you can make things happen in your career and in your life, all while looking good at the same time.
Right.
Eventually, the definition of it formed, yet in that moment,
Uh-huh.
I simply instinctively said it. And as I mentioned, as they were questioning me and laughing at me as well, I was laughing too, because I was like, what type of foolishness is this? Put on your rhinestone combat boots. And of course, for me, the combat boots are a representation of toughness,
Yeah.
assertiveness, protection, business, and the
Getting the job done.
combination, yeah, getting the job done. There you go. And the two of those got combined because of that moment.
I love it. I love it. And it really demonstrates that how you how you carry yourself, how you look, the way you dress, the way that you and sometimes I have often thought of the phrase fake it till you make it. And
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to start acting like
Yeah.
you're wearing your rhinestone combat boots. And then you can start to embody that. You start to there's this thing with imposter syndrome. I can't remember if it was a TikTok or a podcast where I talked about imposter syndrome, and my assertion is it doesn't exist. This is just something we
Mm.
assume that we're not good enough, and so we call it imposter syndrome. But there's
Of
no
course.
reason that we should even believe that. There's uh, the imposter syndrome is just our subconscious brain is trying to catch up with the rest of us. And so I love this idea of starting to move into the role that you want
Mhm.
and dressing the part figuratively, because it's not necessarily the rhinestone combat boots that you'll be wearing.
Right.
But moving into that person that you are, taking action
Yes.
and moving the direction that you want to have the life that you want. I love that whole idea.
Yes. And it's interesting that the friend who was the other, I say friend girl in that moment, the two of us were the sounding boards that day. She had a offline conversation with me a few days after that incident where she said, "That phrase has resonated with me. It is so you, and I want you to do something with that." She was the first person that ever encouraged me and challenged me to write a
Nice.
book about it, to do something with it. She said, "I don't know." She said, "You're in Toastmasters. Maybe you'll do a speech about it." She said, "But I'll tell
Right.
you, I see you writing a book about it." And of course, I scoffed at it initially. And then she said, "Well, here's what I'm thinking. Here's why it's been resonating with me. That is so you. I know you were recommending it as a phrase and suggestion and a moment in time to help her get out of her situation." She said,
Mhm.
"But literally, I've seen you use that to get yourself out of situations." She said, "You're always in action." And for her, the boot, the combat boot, represented being in action, being
Right.
able to deal with the challenges, or to be in those moments where the obstacles are there and the issues are surrounding you, yet you can still move forward. You can walk through it, you can jump over it, and if you must kick it down, you can still
Right.
kick it down. And I thought, wow, okay, yeah. And as I thought about it more, I said, you know what, you're absolutely right. And that's what I discovered about me. Action has led to me being able to bust through the imposter syndrome, the
Right.
self doubt, the fear. When I get too stable, if you will,
Mhm.
or in the moment of indecision, and I love how you talk about making the decision, not being in those spaces of indecision. Yet, if I can move, the movement allows me to break through indecision, break through the self doubt, break through the fear, and keep the momentum going.
That's awesome. So you've got a book that you've
Mhm.
published on the rhinestone method, put on your
Yeah.
rhinestone combat boots, and then also I think you said that you had we were when we were talking a while back, that you have a workbook that's just
I
published, right?
do. I do. Yeah. So the companion workbook just came out this year to it. Last year, though, the book. So I have both now. So they are actually standalone. So that means someone doesn't necessarily need to have the book itself in order to miss out on lessons, because there are lots of lessons in here. As a matter of fact, so much so that my publisher, when we were writing the book, said, "Stop putting all of these activities in. You're going to overwhelm your reader." She said, "But what I do see is you have a workbook." And
Ooh,
that's
nice.
where the workbook came along. And
I
the
love
great
it.
thing about the workbook is it can be standalone as well. And it gives people what I say, that coaching that they need, in addition to having the companion booklet as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, take us through the method. Take us through the rhinestone. You said that the rhinestone, the acronym came later.
The
Um,
acronym did. It came later. And also the definition came later too. And as I like to say, the definition is a two-part definition. I always go with what initially, spiritually, was that initial model of the definition. Yet I will share what both definitions are, and then I can tell you about the actual rhinestone elements. The initial definition is: strap on your tough, I can do this mentality, and get out there and make things happen in your life and career while doing it in style. So that's part one, that was connected definitely to my friend.
right.
She inspired that. That's what I saw. Later on, as my colleague who was there, she and I talked more and I thought on it, and it actually came across a few more years before I fully got to this second definition, and that is: have the courage to climb over obstacles, stand up to challenges, step on top of issues, and kick the butt of problems that are weighing you down and wearing you out.
I love that.
Because we know it depends upon what's happening. You get to that place where you do feel weighted down, you
Yeah.
feel worn out, you feel weary. And a lot of the busy professionals that I've worked with have been in that space. Cassandra, I'm just so tired. I feel like I'm sick of this and I don't know what to do about it. I've been dealing with it for so long. When I'm able to share with them the rhinestone method, it falls in alignment like this. So the R is recognize you are a gem. We know it's
Ooh, nice.
so important to be connected to remember who you are.
Yeah.
The H is heed the wisdom of your carpet moment. This means you're learning from your mistakes. I saw you that resonated with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, both of them do because number one, and in my coaching program, that's one of the things that I start with as well is you can't go anywhere unless you know who you are and where you are.
Yeah.
And so I like that. I like that we really start in the same place,
Yes.
and then and um, I've been doing a lot of work on putting together a program. It's an element of my program, but I'm going to probably pull it out and make it a standalone program as
Mhm.
well on goals. And one of the problems, I'll use my air quotes, that with goals, and this is true. It's not just with goals. This is true with life. We don't analyze and learn from our mistakes. And if we look at SMART goals, for example, there's nothing in SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time honored, time bound. There's nothing in there that says, so what about the mistakes? And I'm I'm seeing that more and more. In fact, I just this week did an exercise of kind of analyzing what is my behavior over the course of a given day or given week,
Mhm.
and what am I learning from that? What am I on the right direction, right trajectory that I want? Am I going the right direction? And if so, let's keep doing it. If not, then what do I need to adjust? There's so many things in our lives that we just are kind of on autopilot, and we're not looking at.
Yeah.
Of course, we want to look at our successes, but we're not looking at our misses
Yeah.
and saying, here's where I missed. Here's why I missed. Now I can adjust and get back on track and start moving towards what I really want. So I love that
Yeah.
that's included early on in your rhinestone method.
And I love the fact that you brought that up, that we don't take the time to actually sit back and analyze and learn from our mistakes. It was interesting when I first started my career. When I first started my career, I started directly after undergrad and I went to law. Nope, let me rephrase that. I went to a nonprofit foundation first. That was the first place where I worked. I started there as an administrative assistant. I moved into management. Then eventually I moved away from the nonprofit and started working at a law association where I again started as an admin, moved into management, and then from there moved into full time entrepreneurship. Yet, what I learned at that first job at the nonprofit, being an administrative professional, was the fact that I wasn't always so keen on learning from mistakes. I
Right.
didn't actually like knowing that I had made a mistake. It was my godmother, and I bless her heart. I'm so grateful for her because she was always the words of wisdom, my life advisor, as I called her. And she was the one that noticed I would get defensive or that I would become closed off or I would be missing something that a previous situation was trying to teach me. And I
Uh-huh.
kept repeating that same mistake and wasn't getting the lesson. And she one day just said to me, you must like knocking your head against that brick wall. Does it hurt? She said, you should have a couple of knots that are not yet healed that are still hurting on your head. When are
Right.
you going to get the lesson? And I told her, I said, my upbringing, I was the oldest daughter, oldest granddaughter, oldest niece, oldest cousin. I'm the oldest. Therefore, I was raised by a single mom
Mhm.
who at that time had five children. She had eight, but five children were still living. And being the oldest, for her instruction to me was basically, let's get it done. I'll tell
Right.
you, I may tell you a second time, but really I'm not going to keep repeating myself because I need you to get it done and get it right the first time.
Yeah.
So I grew up and became a professional thinking you got to get it right the first time. You might have a second chance, but all of this back and forth trying to figure things out, you don't have time for that. And
Right.
when I discovered through my godmother pulling my coattail really and helping me to take a pause and sit on that carpet, she said, life isn't like that. Life
Mm-mm.
may give you multiple chances. She said,
Right.
and what you'll discover in your work, you're doing events. What is one of the final things you do at the end of an event? You do a what went well,
Right.
oh, what went wrong, and what can be done differently next time
Right.
process. She said,
Yeah.
you're doing that all the time. You're telling me about it. She said, that is the called on the carpet moment. You're building it into the work you do. So you have to now learn to live that way in your own life. And that was like a bomb exploded. It was some of the best advice that I received.
Yeah. And especially I've talked in the past about how I'm a recovering perfectionist. It's we perfectionism is problematic in a couple of ways. Number one, we don't do things because we're waiting for it to be perfect. And
Yep.
number two, we don't like to admit that we made any mistakes
Yeah.
because that ends up being a at least we assume that it's an indication of our worth. That if my
So
output
true.
is not perfect, then obviously I'm not good enough. And it has
Yeah.
those two are not connected at all.
Right.
They have
Talk
nothing to do
about
with each other.
right, and that self-worth, that imposter syndrome, the lack of self-confidence, all of those things start to come into play because of that. And you're so right with
Right.
perfectionism. Striving for excellence is much better than striving to be perfect.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I 100% agree. So that's the I, right?
That that was actually
Or
the
no,
H.
H. I got to
Yes.
spell
So
rhinestone right.
right. Hey, I understand. And for me, with each of the letters, they are so action oriented as well, which leads to the I. The I is increase your knowledge. And that's simply a reminder keep learning, invest in yourself, keep learning. As a
Right.
professional, my first boss had told me this when I was at the nonprofit. He said, if you're waiting on your company to pay for you to go to training, you may be waiting forever and ever. Amen.
Right.
He said, because it depends upon where you work, depends upon the company, depends upon even your boss.
Right.
You may or may not get the support financially or from simply them recognizing you and supporting you from that way. You may not
Yeah.
get that support. Therefore, professional development is never the responsibility of your company. It is
Mm-mm.
always the responsibility of you, the employee.
Right.
Another nugget that later I had to tap into as well. Yeah. So that's what the I is
It's so
about.
true. And nobody's going to care about your professional development nearly as much as you will. And if your
So
boss
true.
cares about it, it's because your boss is expecting something different out of you than what you're providing.
Mhm.
But really, for your own personal development, it is your responsibility. So I love that.
Yes, yes. And with the N, it's navigate through negative thinking. We know operating from a positive perspective is always best. You said something when we first met that you have a phrase that you use. What's that phrase? I think it may be the title of another podcast or something that you do.
Untoxic positivity, is that the one?
Untoxic, yes, the untoxic positivity. And I went, ooh, I love that because it reminds us about the fact that there are so many things in our lives that are toxic, yet
Right,
we want to bring more of the positivity in. And that's what the N in Rhinestone keeps us grounded. Get aware of those negative thoughts and start navigating around those negative thoughts.
right. And I think the the untoxic positivity is which it used to be the name of this podcast. And the reason that I came up with that was first of all, toxic positivity. A lot of people don't know what that is or they don't recognize it. Toxic positivity a lot of times gets connected with affirmations that because well we both deal with people in their jobs. If you go to work and you just hate your job and you're trying to convince yourself I love my job, I love my job, I love my job, that's not what I'm talking. That's
Right.
toxic positivity. um, Untoxic positivity is going to be recognizing that, yeah, there's some things about my job that are not great, not my
Mhm.
favorite thing. But so, and a quick example, I had a boss one time that was just frustrating. He didn't understand my part of the operation well. And so for me to talk to him about my operation, what was working, what was not working, it was like talking to my wife in that, yeah, she wants to be supportive, but she has no idea what I'm doing.
Gotcha.
And so,
Mhm.
same thing. I went into my boss one time and I told him, here's what's going on. And he said, I don't know what that means. Oh,
Mm.
so what I learned from him though is I had an experience where my team was not performing well, and I owned it. I told him, "This is what I learned from the experience. This is what I'm going to change. It's not going to happen again." So I can take what is a quote negative situation, I
Mhm.
can put a positive spin on it. This boss was not my favorite, but I learned some great things from him, and so that's the
Nice.
untoxic positivity. You can find something good in everything, and
Yes.
so we're not going to dwell on the negative. That's not productive.
Right.
What we're going to do is we're going to find in the negative the positive. Anything
Mhm.
that's negative is going to give us strength or knowledge or information or lesson or something is going to move us in
Yeah.
the right direction. And the sooner we can separate ourselves from the draw of the negative and learn from it, improve, increase, grow, then we're going to be better off. And then we can just let that negative story go.
I love it. You went through the R.H.I.N. and the E. The first half of that rhinestone method, basically. And I love what you said because when you were talking about finding something good, that takes me back to a mentor who told me years ago that Cassandra, you have to find at least one thing that you enjoy about what you're doing. And that can help to override all of the negative things. She said, if you keep focusing on all the negative, you'll never see the positives.
Right.
Yeah. So I
That's
love
true.
it. Yeah, thank you. I mentioned that you have talked about the E. The E is express yourself with power, and that's about communication, being
Yes.
able to use your communication skills to your advantage. And one of the things that you brought out in your example is the fact that we do a lot of talking to ourselves.
Yeah,
That's
we do.
the first person we talk to when we wake up. And many times it's the last person that we talk to before we go to sleep. And then
Yeah.
in between the day, we talk to multiple people. Yet we have to be mindful not only of what we say to others, yet what is it that we're saying to ourselves. And sometimes it's the what we're saying to ourselves that's really pushing the need for a rhinestone combat boot to be put on and tied up and stepped into so you can get through some of that minutia that's out there and it
Yeah.
comes with the mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, mindset is so important, it's so powerful, and I love that you're addressing the way we talk to ourselves, because we say things to ourselves that we would never say to anybody else. We say
Yeah.
things to ourselves that we would never allow anybody else to say to us.
So
But
true.
we talk about I had a coworker one time who would say things like, "I'm so stupid." No, you're not.
Right.
And why are you
Yeah.
talking about yourself that way? But and we say worse things as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just that thought that we don't even necessarily pick up on.
So
It can
true.
be that can be toxic as well.
Yeah, so true. And that's why the carpet moment of the H is so important as well. And it's uncomfortable. Sometimes you don't want to be aware, become so aware that you now acknowledge it. Yet once you are aware, once you can acknowledge it, then you take the action to be able to change it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moving to the S, we have showcase your authority, and that's demonstrating your leadership abilities.
Okay.
The T is transfer your experiences. And this one is important because sometimes we forget to apply our experiences in our career. My first boss used to say, what you know how to do outside of these four walls won't always be tapped into. Yet, what you do outside of these four walls could be brought into what you do every day in your role. And that was a reminder for us to be connected to our skills, our talents, our abilities, our experiences that could
Yeah.
either help to make what we do even more excellent or to make it even stronger and better. Or sometimes it was to stretch us and to move us into new opportunities and new positions, even. Yet
Right.
transferring those experiences. And I'm sure you more than likely may have even coached some of your clients or even your employees at the time to do just that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody couple weeks ago. I was coaching a client who was older,
Hmm.
and she was moving into a new, and she had an interview, and she's moving industries, but the role, the function was the same. So it was just
Oh,
a different industry that she was going to be
yeah.
in. And she reached out to me and she said, "How do I start over?" And I said, "First of all, you're not starting over. You're not starting
Right.
over because you've got all this experience."
Yeah.
And as I was working with her, um, I asked her, "What about your experience? Which experience comes with age, and not just work experience, but you've got experience in this industry, um, experience in this job function, but you've got
Hmm.
experience as a parent as well, and you've got a child who has needs and requirements and things like that, and you take the whole of your experience. What does that give you as an advantage over somebody else?" And you don't even have to know who the other person is, but if you walk into an interview, for example, knowing that I am incredibly patient, I can see the whole perspective. I am, and you can list all the things that came from your experience. That is a much more powerful way of thinking about your total package than all they're going to see is my wrinkles and my age. Because
Oh,
A, you can't hide the wrinkles and the age,
right.
but B, the wrinkles and the age are indications that there's a knowledge base
Yeah.
that somebody else doesn't have because they don't have the same wrinkles and the same age. And whatever that age is, it's that the way that you approach that, the mindset is that gets to be really, really critical.
It does. And kudos to you for being able to coach her through that moment and to remind her what you do as a parent, what you
Right.
do as a volunteer, what you do as a church member, what you do, basically the things that you are doing outside of the four walls of your job,
Mhm.
you are able to bring some of that into your experience in your role. And it helps to make you even more of a valuable asset for the employer that you're working for. And sometimes we don't want to bring our whole selves or we don't want to bring our full selves into the work that we do for whatever the reasons may be. And lots of times it's for politics, or it could be because I really don't like my job. I know that I'm going
Right.
to get out of here soon, or I have a bad boss. And I don't want to give them all of me because I don't believe that they appreciate me. Yet,
Yeah.
what it is at the end of the day, when you're able to use the T of the rhinestone method and you're transferring your experiences into the workplace, that gives you more fulfillment. That
Right.
helps you to feel better at the end of the day about what you did during that day. It helps you
I love that.
overall within your year. By the time you get to your performance review, now you have much more leverage
Yeah.
to be able to ask for that raise, that promotion, those other opportunities because you have been tapping into those experiences.
Right. And seeing
Yeah.
how, as a whole person, you are your whole person wherever you go. Home,
Yes.
work, volunteering, church. You're the
Yes.
same person. And so the skills that you use, the skills that you gain, the skills that you hone, you can hone at home and then use at work. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing at all. I tell my professional development classes, as a matter of fact, I just said this last week to someone. I said, your home life, your personal life is your practice ground for your work life. And
Right.
your work life is your practice ground for your home life. because sometimes we may do things much better, like be organized, be more productive, or use emotional intelligence much more strongly at work than we do at home.
Yeah,
Therefore, use work as your practice ground for home, use home as your practice ground for work, and whatever those skills are that you're putting into practice, you'll only get stronger at using them and much more effective at getting results from them.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, the O, we were talking a lot about opportunities, and that's what the O is. Open yourself to opportunities, therefore, don't close yourself off. Be open. And especially if you have a boss that says, hey, you would be good at, test it out
Yeah,
because you just may be good at it more than you
yeah,
think. The final N is negotiate with confidence, and that's all about negotiation skills, teaching you how to be open to using negotiation skill, which is another form of communication.
yeah.
And the last portion of the rhinestone method is the final E, and that is get support from others. Enlist others is what that is. So
I
the
love
final
that.
E is enlist others. And as you and I both know, enlisting others is so important. That's why we're in the coaching space.
Right.
When I was having a hard time thinking of myself as a coach, I could embrace the thought of mentor much easier than I could coach. Yet
Hmm.
I had so many colleagues, students, and even potential clients at the time who would say, Cassandra, you are a coach, you are a coach. And I had a colleague who said, who helps the helper when the helper needs help? Who helps the helper when the helper needs help? She
Yeah.
said, you've been around here helping so many people. You've been coaching, you've been mentoring. She said, I don't care what title you give it, but you have been both coach, you've been mentor, you've been a leader. You have been someone who's been helping those who help others. Yet you need to remember that when you need help, seek that support. And
Right.
that's a big lesson, enlisting others. You and I both have coaches ourselves.
Right.
You have your spouse, I have my honey, as I say, my life partner.
Uh-huh.
We have sounding boards, individuals who are here supporting us.
Yeah.
He's, sometimes he just sees a look on my face and he goes, okay, what you thinking? And I'm like, I'm not quite sure just yet, but let me talk this through.
Process
And
it.
right, I'm processing it. And as we talk through it, I can come up with the information. And even like you find with your wife as well, she's helping you to be able to have what you need in that moment. And
Right.
they are our home based support, yet we have those support systems outside of home as well. And that's what I
Yeah.
encourage people with the rhinestone method to remember. You can't do it all by yourself. You can do it better when you have support. And if you're ever out there stuck, wandering around, feeling like you're stagnant and you can't get the movement, that's where the support really comes in handy.
That's so true. And two things that I've thought about with that, enlisting others, enlisting support of others, is number one, you're absolutely right that we all need support at different times and at different levels of support.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just need a reminder that, hey, you're on the right track. And
Yes.
sometimes I might need somebody to say, hey, those thoughts that you're having, those are not good thoughts. Those are not helpful. So that's great, and that's one of the reasons that I've had coaches for a couple of years now, where I've
Mhm.
consistently had coaches that I because they see things, they have a different perspective than what I have. They can see things that I can't see because I'm too close to the situation.
Yes.
So that's one thing. The other thing is that people want to be helpful, and something that I've done, I've encouraged people to do this. I do this in my coaching as well. That because we are so close to ourselves, we can't see what we're good at. We can't see our strengths. And the way that we're kind of trained and taught growing up is don't think too highly of yourself, all
Mhm.
that. And so a question that I like to I've done this myself and it's always powerful, but I've also encouraged other people, and I haven't done it in a while on the podcast, so I'll do it again. Um, ask people that you know, somebody who's close to you. You could ask your honey, you could ask your boss, you could ask
Mhm.
a close friend, what am I good at that I probably don't notice? And I almost
Ah.
always get something that resonates. Um, I had somebody say, "You're really good at connecting with people." And I thought, "Yeah, yeah, I can see that." But I've also had people tell me things that are a surprise. In fact, the first time I heard that, it was a surprise because I consider myself an introvert, and I thought, I just
Really?
connect with
Okay.
people? That doesn't make sense. But then I could see the evidence of it, and the power in that is
Mhm.
once you enlist that help from other people, you get a perspective that is more objective than what you have, and it helps you recognize your strengths. And when you
Yeah.
know what your strengths are, when you know what you're good at, then you can start to act in those strengths with intention. And because they're strengths, number one, you probably feel like, everybody's good at that. No, they're not.
So
And
true.
so as you start doing those things on purpose, you magnify your impact because you're doing something that you're already good at. You're developing those gifts and talents, and you have an an exponentially large impact on the world.
Yeah.
And it's okay to know you're good at something. We're taught to, oh, I'm not all that good. No, no, be confident in what you're good at, but enlisting that help from other people, whether it's a coach or a partner or a friend or whoever it is, to give you that perspective, that is incredibly powerful. So I love that
Yeah.
that's how Rhinestone wraps it up. Let's get other people involved, invested. Let's let's improve everybody by
Yes.
working together and being open and sharing and encouraging.
Yes. Such a great idea that you have. I love when you said you haven't done it in a while, you're thinking of doing it again, simply asking people to ask those they know that are closest to them to be able to let them know what they see that they're good at. And like you were using the phrase, be intentional. You're being intentional about being able to focus on it, to learn that information. I also encourage my clients, yet be intentional about using it, be
Yes.
intentional about implementing it, be intentional about taking action. And when Rhinestone came about from that sister friend moment, my biggest stress was do something. Do something.
Yeah.
You must do something because you're constantly in the cycle of feeling overwhelmed, feeling unappreciated, feeling disrespected, feeling stuck, yet you're not doing something to get
Right.
out of that.
Yeah.
And that's why, as we can see now, what the rhinestone method is about. And when you put each of those on, when I say when you use each of the rhinestones in combination with that combat boot, ooh, you
Yeah.
can get out there and make things happen for sure.
I love it. I love it. So, if somebody wanted to get a hold of the book or the workbook or connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Visiting my website will be the easiest way to connect with me. Sure, I'm out there in social media
Mm.
land and they can find me as the diva of dialogue in different places. However, if they go to my website, it'll be the best way to connect. The website address is www.dialog.com. And I'll say it again, Diva of Dialogue. So it's D as in David, IVA, OF, D as in David, IALOG.com.
I
And
love
I
it.
usually like spelling out the dialogue part initially because most people spell it the traditional way. And then they say, Cassandra, I can't find you. Now I'll ask, did you put the U and E on the end of dialogue? They'll go,
Right.
yeah. I said, that's not how I had it listed.
No.
So it's Diva of Dialogue, the
So, and
DIALOG.
I'll
Yes.
put that in the show notes as well. But I appreciate you spelling it out. I've heard so many podcasts where people say, "Yeah, it's just my name," and okay, I don't know how to spell your name. Is it Caitlin, Kaitlyn, or
Yeah.
Katelyn, or whatever?
Right. Yeah.
So that's fantastic. And so you can connect with Cassandra there at her website, divaofdialogue.com,
Yeah.
and tell us who you work with. Who's your, if you could have your perfect ideal person, who is it that you work with specifically?
Oh, my perfect ideal client is that individual that is ready. They are sick and tired of being sick and tired. They're feeling that anxiety and that frustration. They want to become unstuck and they are ready to take the momentum. they are my ideal client. And as I said before, I work with them to let's get rid of that anxiety. Let's replace it with excitement so
Hmm.
that way you can excel and advance in your career. When they visit divaofdialogue.com, they can also sign up for my 52 Career Success Tips series,
Right.
which gives them those additional tips along the way. Yet, that one on one, when we get in, and I'm doing this because I'm thinking, Ken, I'm like, we get in the trenches.
That's right.
We get in the trenches when we work one on one. And
Right.
that's who I love working with. They are ready to make a move, to have whatever that advancement may be. Sometimes people will say, well, Cassandra, I'm not looking for a promotion. Advancing in your career doesn't always mean a promotion. It
Right.
could be advancing from that mindset that's been keeping you stuck to
Right.
the next level of your thinking.
Exactly. So that's great. And then your 52 tips, those
Yeah.
are fantastic as well. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I encourage you to sign up for her information, check her out, see if it's something that would be helpful for you. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun to get to
Yes,
know
it
you a little bit
has.
better, get to know your rhinestone method, how that works.
Thank you.
Um, that is it. That's what we got for this week. I am not sure what we're going to talk about next week, but it's going to be great. It'll be fantastic. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Get back to the work you love, where you face less stress, gain more happiness, and live your purpose. Let me help you have the life of your dreams. Head over to my website for free resources at kenwilliamscoaching.com.